This video is about rural to urban migration, and we're going to be using Lagos as a case study to help you explain what rural to urban migration is. So hopefully by the end of the lesson you'll be able to explain what rural to urban migration is, and then obviously use a case study from a developing country to help you understand that. So let's have a look at the syllabus. What you're going to be looking at is that third and fourth dot point. We're going to just look at rural to urban migration, and we're going to look at some of those issues to do with the changing direction of people movements. So when we talk about a rural area, we're talking about an area that has low population. Employment is mainly a single primary industry to do with farming. I've got an example here from Australia, Birdsville. If you've ever been there, this is what I feel like rural means to me, and that's an image that I have in my head. Birdsville, very low population, 200 if that, and the main industry is farming. So let's look at Nigeria, and we're going to look at Nigeria's biggest city, and that's Lagos. It's not the actual capital, that's Abuja, and it's one of the biggest countries in Nigeria. I think it's certainly in the top 10. It's very diverse. It has a population of 173 million, and there's lots of diverse religious cultures living in Nigeria. That link there I will share and put it on Google Classroom. It's a really good link. It will compare lots of development indicators with Australia, so that'd be really good for you to have a look at and give you a bit more background about what it's like to live in Nigeria. So the reason why I picked Nigeria is because it's a country where we get a lot of migrants, not just from Nigeria, but other West African countries such as Sierra Leone. You can see this on the map. You can see where Nigeria is. You can see Sierra Leone. And the reason why I've picked that is because it's quite a poor country, and that will give you some idea of where we're talking about. Also, Lagos is one of the fastest growing cities in Africa, and it's one of the really good sort of case studies to look at rural to urban migration. So let's have a look. People want to move to Lagos, and these are push factors because of climate variability in rural areas in Nigeria, the degradation of soil and vegetation, diminishing yields of crops, food insecurity. Any education there is aimed at urban occupation training, which means that you get this education but you can't use it. You have to move to urban areas. There's higher rates of poverty, and then it's very remote and isolated. So this is what we're talking about in rural Nigeria and why people want to move to Lagos. Lagos offers employment opportunities. Nigeria actually has minimum wage legislation, so there's better chances of pay. There's a higher concentration of amenities like health and education. There's a perception of an improved quality of life, and perception is a really good word because it's like the idea of bright lights and being attracted to them. It might not always be the case or a good thing. There's certainly more jobs there than in rural areas. There's communication like internet, telephones, and also power, which in some rural areas in Nigeria and other countries in West Africa might not be. And there's the potential to get houses. There's more houses there. Now, this is just a map of Lagos. Lagos has a lagoon and is next to the sea, next to the Atlantic Ocean, but it's also got several islands, and it's these islands that we'll be talking about some of the problems that have been caused by rural to urban migration. So when we talk about in the next few slides some of the areas, you can see where we're talking about, and we can see Lagos Island and Victoria Island there. That's sort of like the CBD of Lagos. So let's have a look at the rate of growth. So in 1975, Lagos's population was about 3.3 million. During the 70s, the growth rate was actually 40%, and between 1975 and 2015, the growth rate was 5.6%. The population in 2000 was 13.4 million. but in the last sort of 16 years, it's gone up to 21 million. Some estimates have got that at predict it to be higher. So that's what we're talking about. So in the space of 40 years, it's gone from 3.3 million to 21 million. Now, this impact has had a big effect on urban structure. So the city has expanded from a core on Lagos Island, which is what I showed you in that previous map. Initial development along the railway line, major roads, and towards the airport to the north, also along the Lekki Peninsula parallel to the coast. Development in the last 30 years extended further north to the Lagos state border, 25k from the CBD, and west around swampy areas 20 kilometres. Western side of Lagos Lagoon completely developed now. Now, it's important that you listen to the areas. The swampy areas, obviously, is not a great place to construct a city, because obviously it costs a lot more money to build there, and then there's issues with flooding. The economic advantages is that the urban economy more productive than rural. So obviously in rural areas we have manufacturing, that type of thing. Obviously there's increased personal wealth because we've got that minimum wage. We've got modernisation and investment by foreign companies, and I've put an example there, Guinness. A lot of Nigerians drink Guinness, and that's why there's a big factory there, and it employs a lot of people. Farming on the fringe, more intensive. Farmers move to fringe it to access markets and farms. So what happens, people are starting to move closer to the city because of obviously potential job opportunities, and even farmers still want to move to the edges so they can still farm and then have access to the farmers markets, etc. The disadvantages, they can't generate enough formal jobs with frequent recessions. The economy declined since the oil boom in the 60s and 70s. Nigeria is really important for oil and produces a lot of oil. And what we mean by formal jobs is jobs that have contracts. I'm going to show you another video in class that explains to you what informal work is, so you understand what that is. People selling clean water in the informal sector, that's an example of an informal job. 60% of houses in Victoria and Ireland converted for commercial use, which meant there was no houses available. With mechanisation, there's been fewer jobs, especially in rural areas, and then obviously that's led to less investment in rural areas. The social advantages, momentum of people can allow development of squatter sites into visible shanty towns, and this is a big problem, and I'll be showing you some examples of what they live. It's easier to provide low-cost services than in rural areas, so benefit, access to services and family reunions. The disadvantage, the growth too fast for the provision of services, can't keep up the demand for water and sanitisation. 5% of households have piped water, lower than in the 1960s because of this massive rate in change. Growth of settler sites and poor quality of land, like I said about the lagoons, and there's high crime rates, social problems, drugs, prostitution, and there's been riots recently with social upheaval. The environmental disadvantage is a problem with adequate waste collection and disposal, because so many people have moved so quickly there, which means that rubbish backs up and rubbish is just left on the streets. And obviously there's an inadequate provision of sewage. It costs a lot of money to build the infrastructure for a large amount of people, and because there's nowhere for it to go, it goes in the lagoon, and that becomes very, very polluted. So we've got big issues there. And then flooding is common, particularly in the rainy season. It's in the tropics, and there's lots of traffic congestion and industrial growth and air pollution. So what I've gone through there is a really detailed example and case study of the effects of rural to urban migration, and effects on the social, economic and environmental effects. A lot of information there. I hope that helps, and in class we'll be talking through these impacts as well. Alright, well done Year 11, you're doing a great job. Thanks for watching that video, and I'll catch you soon.